back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Haley, and today I am going to be doing my first ever end of the month reading wrap up, and I'm very excited. So one of my biggest goals and like my New Year's resolution was to spend a lot less time on social media. I found that I was spending an insane amount of time just like mindlessly scrolling, not getting anything done, and just feeling really negative afterwards. So I wanted to replace scrolling with reading, and it took me a few months. We're in April. Actually, we're going to be in May once this video is up. It took me a little bit, but I began my reading journey and I finished 11 books this month. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to do like a little reading wrap up each month and share all of the books that I read, what they're loosely about, and my thoughts. I hope that you guys enjoy this video. I am just going to jump right into it since we have a ton to talk about today. I've also become quite the organized queen lately, so I will be kind of referring to my little journal here. I did like a little book blurb so that I could remember certain points about each book that I'm talking about so that I could mention them in today's video. So if you see me looking at my notebook, that is why. I'm just starting this in no particular order. I have my little stack of books here, and the first title that I have is When Life Gives You Lululemon by Lauren Weisberger. It's really funny, I actually attempted to read this book a while back, and it's not that it didn't like draw me in right away, it's just that my mind was not invested. So I picked it up again and finished it in like 2 days. It's a pretty, I don't want to say short read because it's a little bit over 300 pages, but it's a quick read. It's like a nice, easy read. This book is in adult fiction. It has a little bit of humor. The way that it's written is kind of like the grown-up version of The Click Book. So I feel like if you grew up enjoying that series, you would like something like this. Or even if you read the White Girl Problem series from Babe Walker, it's like that similar, snarky, edgy sort of humor. I found it to be very funny, lighthearted, and the way that it's written is really cool. I like books that kind of share different point of views throughout each chapter. So in each chapter, it's a different point of view. There are 3 women that are the main characters, and it's all about their lives in Greenwich. There's romance, there's scandal, and it's just very funny because I feel like the Greenwich demographic that they're referring to that go to Starbucks and wear Lululemon is very prominent here in Austin. So it's like I could totally imagine these moms that they're talking about, and I just found it very funny. It is also a Devil Wears Prada novel, so if you like that, you will definitely like this. Next up, this book is The 2 Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver, and this is a very interesting read. It was not a favorite of mine, which I'm really upset about because I think that it could have been really good. It just was one of those books that was a little bit too long, like longer than it needed to be. But basically, the book starts out and the fiance of the main character dies in a horrible car accident on her birthday. So already off to a terrible start. So throughout the book, it's kind of going through her grief journey and dealing with this new life where she was about to get married to this partner and suddenly he's not there, and just trying to navigate her new life. But throughout her grief process, she struggles with sleeping. She kind of becomes an insomniac, so she ends up taking sleeping pills. Each time she takes these pills, she is like transferred to a alternate reality, or so she thinks. It's like she's dreaming, obviously, because it's at night. It's a dream, but it's a different reality where basically life picks up where it left off, and it becomes kind of confusing as a reader. The way that the chapters are set up is it starts in reality, and then the next chapter will be her asleep and what's going on in that alternate reality. I actually ended up skipping over quite a bit of the asleep portion and just kind of skimming those pages, so I really read this book on fast forward, but it was just way too drawn out and slow. It's also like a very typical sort of ending. Like, I'm not going to give it away, but once you start reading the book, you kind of know where it's going. And so the ending of it was super unsatisfying because you're like kind of waiting for this whole moment, and then it's just over so quickly. So overall, this was kind of a more disappointing read to me. I personally wouldn't recommend it. It's just like a lot of wasted time. Next up, you guys have probably seen this cover if you are very in tune to BookTok or BookTube. This is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, and I fell in love with Emily's writing. I picked up a few other books from her, including Beach Read, which is another very popular book by her. Anyways, this book was really, really good. It's a fiction adult romance. I feel like it's kind of in between a YA romance and an adult romance. There are like some sexy vibes in here, but not overly so. Like some of the plot felt a little bit juvenile, but in a good way. Like I really eat up like YA romance. It's my favorite. So basically the premise of this book is it's two BFFs that go on a summer vacation every year, and they do it for about 7 years. It's like 7 or 8 years, and on one of the last ones they have a falling out. They stop being friends, they stop going on vacations. So the main character Poppy ends up getting the BFF Alex to go on another trip with her. It's kind of like a redo trip to kind of rekindle their friendship, and each chapter is like, one will be like present day and the next one will kind of retell the vacation of like their second summer vacation, and then the one after that will be the third summer vacation, and just kind of going through all of these different trips until it's finally the last trip that they went on, and it further explains their falling out, which then leads to the last vacation, the redo one, where they kind of rekindle and end up hooking up, and it is a delight. A very cute, easy read. I love books like this. I love a happy ending. I love a little romance. So I really enjoyed this one and I would highly recommend. Next up, oh my goodness, Colleen. Colleen Hoover is everywhere right now. Like anytime I'm on social media, someone is reading a different book from her, and she has so many different popular ones right now. I picked up a few for the month of May that I'm very excited to get started. This one by her is It Ends With Us, which I would say is probably one of her more popular titles. This one was like a 5-star read for me. I loved this book so much. I love her writing style. I love the way that this story is told. It's kind of one of those things where the main character starts this new life and everything is looking amazing. She's like, this is too good to be true, and it ends up being too good to be true, and there is hints of like history repeating itself, like generational trauma, stuff like that, and it does touch on domestic violence. So if that is triggering to you, this is a very emotional read. So while the main character is going through all of these ups and downs in her present life, she ends up reconnecting with a missing link from her past and sort of again rekindling that friendship, and it's really, really good. Like throughout the book, my thoughts were changing all over the place. I was rooting for one person and then rooting for the next person, and it's just really well written and a very enjoyable read. Next up is a nonfiction. This is a self-help book. It is called Calm the Fuck Down by Sarah Knight, and it's how to control what you can, accept what you can. For all of my anxious angels out there, I think we can all agree that this is something a lot of us could work on. So this definitely caught my eye. I was very excited to read it. And it's one of those like light-hearted self-help books where there's like a lot of humor to it. It's not all just like science and just, you know, hard to get through. But my issue with this book is if you have anxiety, I have a panic disorder, anxiety, and agoraphobia. A lot of the things that she talks about in this book is things that we already know, things that we've been told before, we've tried before, and I feel like a lot of her stories are very surface level, and we all experience anxiety differently. The author Sarah says that she has general anxiety disorder. I think a lot of us, especially with the times that we're living in, deal with anxiety. So there's definitely different types of anxiety and different ways that people deal with anxiety, but I felt like this book was very surface level. Like it didn't tell me anything I didn't already know or anything that I haven't already tried. You know what I mean? I did appreciate the humor. It wasn't a bad read. It just wasn't necessarily helpful, if that makes sense. So I don't know, if you have a little bit of anxiety and it's not like crippling you day to day, maybe this would be helpful to you. For my circumstances, I didn't find this super helpful. The next book I have caught my eye by the cover. I do judge a book by its cover, I'm sorry. I love that it was colorful, the title, Happy for You. It just drew me. The cover is what entices you to reach out, grab it, and see what it's all about, you know? So no shame in that. But this title is Happy for You by Claire Stanford, and I actually picked this up unknowingly on its publishing day, which is really cool. So I like read it as soon as it came out. The reason that I ended up picking up this book is that it said it was kind of about the emotions of life and the author's, or the main character's, ambivalence towards life and what she should be doing, and there was kind of some mention of struggling with social media, which, you know, I can definitely relate to. So that's what initially drew me in. It is totally not at all what I expected though, and not in a bad way. So this novel is a literary fiction. It's about a woman that gets a new job at the third largest internet company, and it's a little bit repetitive in that regard because they never actually say the company's name, but throughout the book it says third largest internet company like 3,000 times. So my eyes just started skimming over that whole phrase. She gets assigned to the Happiness Project. It's all about this huge company trying to tap into the happiness market and kind of figure out an algorithm to understand people's happiness levels, which is very interesting and not far off from reality. But there's a lot that goes into this book. So like regarding the social media aspect, she's working close-knit with this company. She's very familiar with these algorithms and how much information and data all of these companies are taking from us, which is shocking when you think about it. And she sort of has like this ambivalence towards social media where I think a lot of us can relate into like logging on to Facebook or Instagram and seeing all of these happy photos and everybody's pregnant or getting engaged, and it's just kind of like, am I supposed to be doing that? Like, I'm not there. Is that what makes people happy? Is that what we're supposed to do? So she kind of goes through all of these emotions of life and just kind of feeling like different from everyone else, which again, I think we all go through these moments where we're like, is this normal? Do other people feel the same way as me? Are we all like just pretending? I don't know. I found it very interesting. It just kind of talks about like life's expectations for people and not really abiding by that. But it also touches on grief and going through all of these different processes of life, like happy or sad, ups and downs, and how all of those emotions kind of connect us. So I found this really interesting. I will say that it started off a little bit slow, and I think everybody that reads this book will come out taking something different from it because there is a lot in here. And I just feel like whatever you are looking for starting this book, you'll come out with a different thought process. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but after you read it, it will, or it should. Anyways, I liked it. So this one I have many thoughts, but this is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. And I do not like this book. On the back it says Vogue's 10 best books of 2017, and I actually picked this book up last year because someone had recommended it on TikTok. I started it last year. I read like 2 chapters and I was like, okay, I'm not really getting into this, but I picked it up again. I'm on my reading journey and I was like, I'm gonna finish this damn book, okay? And it was freaking hard to, okay? I did not want to finish this book. It was not a good book in my humble opinion. The author has a very plain-spoken way of writing, which I know some people really prefer, but I found it something to be desired. It just didn't draw me in like other books do. But another thing that I found extremely frustrating is that the author doesn't use quotations when any of the characters are speaking, and sometimes that will be in the middle of a paragraph and you're like, is this a thought? Who is talking? Like, it's very bizarre and it's confusing. Half the time I had no idea what the hell was going on. The characters of this book are awful. You're usually rooting for the main character or rooting for someone. Like, you can kind of see yourself in someone or just enjoy one of the characters. I did not like a single character in here. I found them to be extremely boring, entitled, just not really great people. I wasn't rooting for anyone. They're all extremely miserable and weird. And then another issue I had with the book isn't necessarily the book's problem. It was like a publishing error. There was like 70 pages in the middle of the book missing for some reason. So I ended up having to read that portion online and then come back and read the rest of the book, which was annoying, especially since I already did not like this book. And so now I'm having to do all of these things to finish it. I did not like this book. I would not recommend this book. And I have to tell you, like, I will probably not pick up another book from this author. I know that this author has been highly regarded, actually, and has like some sort of maybe a Netflix series or a movie or something about a previous book. And I heard that something is happening with this book, like another series or movie, which I just can't understand why somebody would choose this. Those are my thoughts. I did not enjoy this title and I would not recommend. Next up, we have a memoir by Emily Ratajkowski, and I feel like I'm butchering her name, but she is an actress and model, and this book is entitled My Body. This is a very honest, raw retelling of her life, how she got started in her career, her battles with like mental health, objectification, feminism, sexuality, coming to terms and kind of reflecting on how she was treated in her, you know, journey to where she is today, and how it's kind of a boys club in the industry that she's in and how those men take advantage of women. There are portions of this book that I think, unfortunately, a lot of women, if not all women, can relate to and see themselves in her place. I did have a lot of emotions reading this book, honestly, but there are also chapters that are a little bit on the slow side. Overall, I found it super interesting and, again, very raw and real, and just kind of diving into those harder topics. So if you're into like more feminism reads, I think that you might enjoy this one. The next book I have is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, and I feel like this one was extremely popular at the beginning of quarantine, but I never picked it up. So I know I'm a little late on this one, but there were just so many conflicting thoughts about this book. It intrigued me. People were like, that is the worst book I've ever read, and then other people were like, oh my god, it broke me. It was life-changing, whatever. So I had to figure out what the fuss was all about, and I think I kind of land a little bit in between. This one is a young adult romance, thriller, a little bit of mystery, and I feel like it is written very juvenile. But it's about this distinguished, wealthy family. They have a private island off the coast of Massachusetts, and let me just read like the first sentence because it kind of gives you everything you need to know. Welcome to the beautiful Sinclair family. No one is a criminal, no one is an addict, and no one is a failure. The Sinclairs are athletic, tall, handsome. We are old money Democrats. Our smiles are wide, our chins are square, and our tennis serves aggressive. It doesn't matter if divorce shreds the muscles of our hearts so that they will hardly beat without a struggle. It doesn't matter if trust fund money is running out, if credit card bills go unpaid on the kitchen counter. It doesn't matter if there's a cluster of pill bottles on the bedside table. It doesn't matter if one of us is desperately, desperately in love. So much in love that equally desperate measures must be taken. We are Sinclairs, no one is needy, no one is wrong. We live, at least in the summertime, on a private island off the coast of Massachusetts. Perhaps that's all you need to know. So the whole book is written like that, which is mildly irritating. They're just very like prissy, hide your feelings, wealthy people. But this book is about a girl. She is a young girl, I think she's 19, and she ends up having a terrible accident and suffers amnesia. So throughout the whole book, she's trying to kind of remember what happened in this accident that caused this amnesia. She has no recollection. Her family will not tell her. I think the mom says multiple times that she's told her and the girl's forgotten it. So she needs to kind of figure out on her own, piecing things back together and figure out what happened. The end is a twist that I absolutely did not see coming, and I found very frustrating. I was so mad about the ending. I did not want it to end like that. It didn't make sense to me, and I wanted better. I don't know, the way that it was written was just not my favorite. I don't think it was necessarily terrible. If you were interested in reading it, go ahead and read it. It's not something that I'd be like, don't waste your time. But I definitely did not love it. I don't know. However, I do have another 5-star read, okay? This book is another one that was everywhere for a while, and I'm just a little late to picking it up, but this is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love this book. I love this book. This is a historical fiction romance novel. It goes through Evelyn Hugo's glamorous life as a Hollywood socialite throughout like the 1950s to the 1980s. And it talks about all of the husbands that she had, the 7 husbands, and her life with each of them. And the story is just, it just sucks you in. I'm a sucker for like any old Hollywood sort of thing. Like I love reading about it. I love watching movies about it. I'm obsessed. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But although she has this beautiful, glamorous life, there's like so much tragedy and bullshit that she goes through. So it's super interesting. But basically, Evelyn Hugo was this huge socialite for that huge chunk of time, and then just kind of fell off the face of the earth. She stopped doing appearances, she stopped doing interviews, and so randomly, years later, she seemingly randomly reaches out to a magazine reporter and is like, hey, I want to do an interview. And so obviously the magazine jumps on this opportunity. No one's heard about her for years. They're like, we got to get into this. So once the magazine reporter gets to Evelyn's home, she's like, yeah, I'm not doing an interview, but I am going to tell you my whole life story and you're gonna write my biography. Eventually, the magazine reporter agrees, and so some chapters are the point of view of the magazine reporter, kind of piecing things together, talking to Evelyn, and then the rest is from the point of view of Evelyn, and just you're in that time, and I love it so much. There are quite a few twists in here that I really enjoyed, so I highly recommend this one as well. As soon as I finished reading it, this was the first book that I read in April. I gave it to my mom and she loved it, and it's a really, really good one. I think I'm gonna send it to my grandma too, because I'm like, everyone needs to read this. The last book I have is yet another memoir, and this is the 11th book. Can't believe I read 11 books. I love memoirs. Even if I'm not super familiar with the author, I like reading about people's lives. If it's highly recommended, I'm seeing the title a lot, then I will often pick it up. And this was one of those books where I was not familiar with Michelle Zauner, and now I know her life story. So this is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, and it's classified as Asian literature because she is Korean, and a lot of this book is focused on Korean culture and more specifically the food of her culture and like the significance that cooking and eating is in her culture. So that's a big chunk of this book, and personally, I'm white. I wasn't familiar with like a lot of these dishes, so I did end up having to look up a lot of the words and figure out what they were talking about, and just to be a little bit more clued in. But I enjoyed this a lot. It kind of felt intimate in the ways that you're almost like reading her diary. It's very raw. It's a little bit more plain spoken. It talks about grief, struggling with identity. A lot of people describe this as like a coming of age story, which I would definitely agree with. One thing I really enjoyed about this book is the way that she talked about grief. It wasn't just I'm sad and I'm mourning. It was talking about the ugly sides of grief, the anger that you feel, and it just felt so raw. Like I said, it's almost like reading her diary or like a journal of sorts. So that is kind of my only complaint, if you will. I don't really want to complain about a memoir, but it is a little bit more plain spoken, and there's not a ton of structure in this book, but I enjoyed it all the same. So that, my friends, are the 11 books that I read throughout April, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this little reading wrap up. Let me know if you do. I'll be linking all the books that I talked about today in the description box if you guys want to check them out, if any of them caught your eye or sound interesting. Also, don't be afraid to leave book recommendations down below. I would love to hear your recommendations. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye!